Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of The Whole Story. It's been a couple weeks, and I hope everybody's been enjoying Blackout. But for tonight, we're going to be focusing on a couple of some wormhole space shenanigans, although I'm sure we'll probably dabble on nullsec and some of the Blackout stuff as well. So for tonight's episode, if you follow the episodes, last time I had a bunch of kind of larger corporations. We were guessing about what the future might hold and blackout. So for tonight, I've got three smaller corporations that you may or may not have actually heard of, and we're going to talk a bit about. Some of these guys are kind of newish wormhole crews. At least one of them's kind of old hand wormhole space, but we're gonna dabble and excuse me, dive into what wormhole space is like, how they're enjoying it, how they're finding building a corporation, and whatever else we find out as we go across that story. And so, without further ado, joining me tonight, I've got Fial Nari from Lux Permanent.
Hey,
We've got Dimitri Wizard from the Aether.
Hey, how's it going?
And last but not least, we've got Rival from Dead Orbit. Mind blank.
Hey, everybody.
So, what we're gonna do is, if you've heard of these guys, then great. Maybe they're doing better than some of them think they are. If you haven't, then we're gonna try to introduce them, and by the end of tonight, hopefully some of you guys will know three new wormhole groups you have not heard of, and we're going to chit chat about how they're finding wormhole space in general. So, without further ado, we're gonna start out with letting Fiel tell us a bit about his corp, who he is, and whatever else he wants to share with us.
well, hi. So we're a rather recent corp. We've been at least recent in C5s. We've been around since 2017, but we decided to migrate to higher class holes. So we're kind of gathering on about 10 to 15 ish people and managing how to get new bros inside the hole and the wormhole mechanics essentially. So the core crew is about the first 8 people, and everything else is pretty much new people that are just joining in. As for the current things that we've been doing, it's pretty much just the usual wormhole things between the PvE and now with the new mechanics being introduced, we're venturing more into things like nullsec and PvP in and those types of adventure.
Oh, audio issue. Okay, good now? Whoop. Stream's shouting at me that this audio is not working. OBS says it is. Okay. All right. Well, uh, I'll repeat. Uh, I'm sure I speak for all of C5 space when I say that we wish you the best and we're excited to have another corp to shoot at on the block. So I look forward to finding you guys and trading exploding spaceships. Rolling right along, if you've been in wormhole space for a while, you might recognize that Dimitri. He's been away for a couple years, but he's back and he's rebuilding his corp, more or less from scratch, as he might tell us. So taking it away, Dimitri, why don't you do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and your corp?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'm Dimitri Wizard. I've been running the Azir now for probably about 7, 8 years. Actually, since just before it became the Azir when we were out in Nullsec. Yeah, I've been away for the last 4 years, and kind of friends have just pulled me back in, and we decided to hit up C3 nullsec so that we could get some nullsec small gang stuff because that's kind of where we wanted to stay. And then like 2 weeks being back, the blackout happened. So you can imagine how happy I was about that. Other than that, we've just been bumming around in low class space with not really any desire to go any higher than that for now. We kind of wanted to stay small and keep the small gang stuff because that's where we have most.
Well, welcome back to Wormhole Space. And we'll we'll dig into a bit more of the some of the other bits you mentioned on there afterwards. Last but not least, Rival, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and your corp?
Hey, yeah, thanks. So, my name's Arrival. Also, used to go by Bismarck in game. Been around the block quite a bit, even though I've got a newer tune. Been playing since about 2008, and was the founder CEO of Mafia Redux and also Furnace, both of which were corps that lived in wormholes. I've been in C5 space, been in C2 space a lot, been in Thera a little bit, but now trying something new at Dead Orbit. We started up back. We've only been around for about 2 months now, maybe. I came back to the game after taking a long break in 2016 and just now coming back. The blackout's been awesome. We've been enjoying that so far, and we're mostly just a small game corp, and I'd say like 90% of our PvP probably happens in nullsec out of our static, and been enjoying it so far.
Well, great. We're welcome back. It sounds like. So I guess we've got two welcome backs here, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are enjoying Wormhole Space. So the first question I wanted to kind of just throw at everybody, and we can go in the same order, or you guys can butt in or jump over each other, I guess, if you really want. Um, so at least two of you, this is return to wormhole space. It sounds like, but what is it if you're new? What is it that brought you to wormhole space? And if it sounds like you're coming back, what is it that keeps drawing you back into choosing to live in wormhole space?
Sure, I'll jump in. For our corp, it's been just the kind of the unexpected of it. We used to live in NPC nullsec, or we'd sit in a low sec entry near a nullsec area, and eventually it just got a little stale. You fight the same people all the time. Both groups usually get used to each other's tricks, and it just starts to get a little stale. The beauty of the wormhole, especially when you're rolling your statics, or in other words, you're getting a new connection to a new area of space. It's a lot more interesting. You can go all over Eve. There's no limit to where you can go. It's just up to RNG. So honestly, ever since I went into a C2 with a static nullsec and C5, I haven't been able to live in K space again, and I don't see myself ever leaving a wormhole unless I was forcibly moved out.
We had much the same experience actually, the Azir, because when we all came back, we all went to Origin. I think yeah, it was Origin, but it's just like nullsec is just who can. I can't handle that anymore. It's just too much politics and too much crap. The fleet sizes are too big. You just undock, hit F1 when you get a target, and that's it. I can't do that no more.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment. I started Eve in nullsec, essentially, ended up in mining hell. Then I decided to try and do some of the big alliances. And the thing that kind of showed itself was that I couldn't deal much with the politics, and the most of the mandatory fleets, even if they are required, they can be a little hassling. So I decided to go into wormholes because that would be a little more freedom from politics, a little bit of the unexpected as well, and to try out and find more tight knit groups instead of just big blue donuts essentially.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on those ideas too, something that I found I it definitely happens in small game, obviously, but I also think it transcends into wormhole groups as well. Is just the ability to individually pilot, which is something that I think is kind of lost upon in some other play styles within the game. And for me personally, when I'm anchoring on somebody or having to follow, an FC, it's just not my personal game style. I find it a little boring. And I think when you're in like a wormhole group, there's a little more freedom to show off individual pilot skill, which I think is where this game really shines. And I feel like a decent amount of the Eve population would benefit from trying some new stuff, maybe finding talent that you didn't know you maybe had.
I 100% agree on that. And getting in fights in wormhole space too, you'll end up finding your weight class too. Like even with just a few guys, you can take out a fleet of almost 20.
Yeah, no doubt. Like that numbers necessarily doesn't always play a major factor. I love the kitchen sink fleet. Like I don't care if it's like maybe it's a nano kitchen sink or an armor kitchen sink. Just not always having to have a uniform fleet composition is also fun. So you get a little more freedom in what you're able to fly. And there's also that there's a limit to what kind of capitals you may be fighting against. Whether it depends on if it's a low class wormhole and doesn't have the mass to bring in caps, or it's high class and you can only fit so many before it collapses on you. So that dynamic also is appealing to, I think, smaller groups like ourselves.
Yeah, I'll agree with that one too. I get pretty sick of fighting the capitals in C6 space when we were in Ragnarok or as Ragnarok and like upper class is just it's just like and again like I found that upper class space was almost the same as nullsec too though, where it was just like fleets of T3s after T3s after T3s, and then now all I hear about high class space is it just being Lashak.
Yeah. It's not new for wormhole space to be dominated by just a couple ship types. And I think the Leshak meta especially seemed very daunting when it first came out. Now that we've seen some fleets actually smash themselves into each other, I think some people are starting to get a feel for it. Like some counters have been developed, and maybe we're gonna work ourselves back to a big circle. But the T3 rebalance kind of killed giant T3 fleets for the most part. Um, it became Loki's, which became Damnations, which became Drex and Lashaks and things. So, there's movement there. Um, I don't want to get too deep into a pigeonhole into the exact meta right now though. We can definitely touch on that later if we have some time, but I wanted to dig into some of the things that I think you guys are very capable to yeah to really touch on. And so it was really excuse me, great to hear everyone's 2 cents and opinions on what I always love to hear is I think for the most part most people come to wormhole space for some of the same reasons or many of the same reasons. All three of you shared your stories about what it is that's pulling you into wormhole space, but um, they weren't terribly different. Like the reasons that you're here, what you're enjoying, what's working, what isn't. Small gang is one of the things that I see people complaining that they can't find anymore in Eve all the time, but it's pretty lively and still kicking it out here at least.
Yeah, no, I agree with like getting into wormhole space too. I've noticed that there's a lot more industrial groups throughout lower class space too. With this new moon mining citadel, like that's new since I've quit, and that's pretty crazy too. Like the industrial empires that are setting up in wormhole space are actually pretty vast.
So, another question I had for you guys. I know at least two of you can probably speak very specifically on this. So we're a couple days into, I think, the second week of blackout, and I think Dimitri, you said you're living in a 3-null. Rival, I think you're in a 2-null. Um, Feel, I don't know. I know you guys are up in a 5, so you definitely don't have a static null, but I don't know how often you guys go out roaming in nullsec. But just curious, as smaller crews, how are you guys finding blackout?
I would say so far, Blackout for my group has been widely accepted and celebrated. Actually, it's definitely made the game feel different. I remember back when I was a little noob, going to low sec for the first time and being completely spooked and not knowing anything and just scared. And that kind of like nostalgic feeling of just being a noob again and like the wonder is back. And that's, coming from a 10-year veteran of the game. I It's just cool not to know what's in system anymore and not have that instant intel. I am biased. I am like a hunter, I guess you'd say. So I do enjoy the element of being able to go hunt in anoms and find ratters potentially, but at the same time, I don't know what the response fleet looks like. I don't know what other roaming gangs are coming in potentially doing the same thing that I might find conflict with my group. And that whole element of just surprise really just has really shaken up the game, and I think in a good way. And while I will say, based off of, 'cause I roam no like pretty much every day, ratting is definitely down based off of just my own observations on Dotland. But at the same time, our kills don't seem to have really changed up or down too much. Just, I would say, it's more small gang versus small gang than small gang versus rather that might escalate into a fight per se. And so that's been really good, and my group is really excited about it. And I've also witnessed some small gang people that had quit within the past few years say that they're returning or wanting to see how long this will last, and depending on that, potentially come back.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've,
good.
yeah, I've seen a lot of the same things too. Like, and even just like visual observation, like not a whole lot of Rex on D-scan as you're going through systems. Like nobody's ratting anywhere, and like, you open up Dotlands, the deltas are all zero everywhere. It's hard to get a ratter kill these days.
It's certainly consolidated a lot of Eve. Like the people, you're not gonna find many people ratting out in bumfuck nowhere by themselves as much anymore. Um, you do have, some of the groups that are continuing to rat under their umbrella. I've seen some of the umbrellas at least seem a bit weaker. Some groups seem a little less willing to throw Titans around willy nilly now because they're also unsure of what else might be out there. But I don't have a huge sample set on that for sure either. Um, both of those things are kind of expected though. Like I think, CCP was surely expecting that ratting was going to go down, hunting was going to go up. Whether or not there'd be enough hunters to be hunting each other to keep up is kind of the, remains to be seen thing, and I think we'll continue to find out as Blackout plays out a bit longer.
Oh yeah, I definitely think it was expected on CCP's behalf. Like the whole mechanic itself screams like be safe, and you can't really rat, especially unless you're pumping D scan. You can't AFK rat, which is what a lot of people wanted to do because it was less attention being paid to your doing your mind numbing task.
Well, in Lux, I think that the blackout was pretty much a positive thing because it kind of boosted our people to start buying blobs ships, and we started looking more, paying more attention to the nullsec wormholes, and it also gave a chance for our new Eve players, like the below 10 million SP. It gave them a chance to have a better role in the fleets. I mean, we could roam and we could do the usual things around in null, but the blobs makes up for the lack of skill with the coordination, allowing them to just fly into bombers and drop on people and kind of do different content, and sometimes very fun content for the new people that haven't really experienced much. And it also gives a role for the veterans to fly the blob ships and kind of do a little synergy with everyone, be it new guys or veterans alike.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's what's always been great about Eve is the fact that, uh, with the game's original vision that I can think of, it was always that you'd have new players or veterans alike, and skill points wasn't necessarily a detriment for new players because you always had a role to fill. And I think with Blackout, the role of scouting has just exponentially become more important. And that excites me as someone who mostly is a scout. I still enjoy doing that all the time. But now you can't use local as your instant intel. You have to actually physically be moving around the system using your D scan, not just 360, but pinpointing it with 15-degree scans and knowing precisely where people are going and where movement is happening. And I think that's really great because, like you said, yeah, I agree. It brings back a role that previously like anyone could do, and now it's something that a new player could try and get into.
Do you think Blackout is helping players that, for lack of a better phrase, have Eve skills kind of excel? Is like if you know how to use D-scan and you're better at piloting and know how to do your job a bit better as a hunter, is it benefiting them more than the people that maybe don't know what they're doing?
I would 100% agree with that. I would say that benefits a skilled pilot a little bit more. And I can speak, personally, just even today, hunting some people where I was a little slower with my D scan, trying to narrow down what anomaly a ratter was in. And I had been on his 360 scan probably for maybe a minute. And so if that person just been in the D scan button, they would have found me and known that there was probably a hostile in their system. So I think it does reward skill, which, in my opinion, is really important for this game to continue to promote.
Yeah, I think it really promotes a lot the skilled pilots, and it gives new things for the already stale people in null to learn about. They need to learn things about like D-scan and how to pinpoint people, even because most of the experience I've had is that they don't even D-scan. I can point 0.5 AU probe scan someone and he's not gonna notice. Most of the times, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think it benefits the elder players a little bit more, especially the people who know the mechanics a little bit better, and even newer hunters. It's like I just learned the other day that you can hit your D scan hotkey and click on things, and it'll go directly to that. Never knew that before. Fantastic. And it's like it's those little tips and tricks that you learn throughout your time as a pilot that definitely add up for the blackout.
So, I'm going to change gears again and we'll bounce back to some wormhole space stuff. So, I don't know exactly what positions each of you hold in your corp. I think Rivals said he's the CEO, and I think you probably are as well, Dimitri. But we can share that again here. Um, I'm curious to hear some of just your thoughts and experiences for all three of you on building your wormhole corp. Right, right now at least all three of you are in comparatively fairly small groups. Um, what are some of the challenges you guys have had, trying to make a name for yourselves, trying to solicit players? Are you mainly pulling in people that you already knew before you started the corp? Are you, excuse me, just, having luck rolling the dice with kind of random people? How are you guys building your corporations?
With Dead Orbit, I've been extremely lucky and I've had just an amazing crew of guys that I've been flying with now since through Mafia, Furnace, and now Dead Orbit since the early 2010s. And luckily, when word kind of got around that we're reforming, most of them resubbed and started playing again. But we also work hard to try and bring in some new recruits. I love small gang in this game, and newer players, if they show just some willingness to learn or interest in small gang, despite us being veterans, we'll take in a new player and try and see if we can't show them the ropes and show them how great Eve really can be in different game style than I think most people do. Um, Luckily with Citadels too, I think even though there's a little negativity about Citadels and nullsec and wormholes, they've really made staging just so much easier. I can't tell you how many hours I lost setting up posses and C5s and C2s, or making what we used to call our prison tower for all the new players to go. That was like an undefended small tower because they didn't have the trust yet to go into the main ones. The Citadels just made things a lot easier, and being in a lower class wormhole in a C2 means we've always got some kind of logistics connection usually, and so it's not too hard to get new recruits into the wormhole. I think probably our largest challenge is that we're super niche. Being in a C2 small game group, not everyone wants to do that. Time zones can be an issue too, and so yeah, overall it's been good though. It's not super challenging, but it does have some growing pains here and there.
The Azir is kind of, yeah, experiences them with the same thing. When I came back, most of our core group came back, and then we managed to recruit probably 15 new guys into the corp, which gives us, I don't know, 10 actives around during our prime time. But again, yeah, just like you said, being in a low class hold and being small gang, not everybody's really interested in that. Everybody wants to do caps, or they want to do high class ratting, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the benefit in what I've been doing in our home system, because everybody wants to do the big stuff, and not all can. And the benefits of living in C5 of Riot kind of is that a confessor can do a lot, and new people can very easily get into confessors. So that kind of gives them a role as well. As for recruiting, well, people come by, they're interested. Most are old null-sec players that kind of don't feel the difference between null and wormholes now, and they want to try out wormholes. Some are tired of writing, some don't want to do different things. It's kind of around those topics that they want to join. Most of the times they want to go to the big ones because well, it's the big ones. Everybody wants to join the big guys, but there's a lot of people interested in the smaller corps that where they can feel that small things can do a lot, and either PvP or even PvE.
I've noticed that as well, actually, that a lot of old nullsec guys are interested in going into wormholes now. And I've got, I think in the Azir, we've got two NC dot guys, and can't remember what the other one was. Another old Nully Secunda, I think. And then
That's an
yeah, they
old
just,
name.
I know, right? But yeah, just wanted to do small gangs, sick of the huge fleets and the burnout and the garbage.
I mean, I think something we speculated a bit in our last episode was with local gone, the that difference between wormhole space and nullsec is a bit smaller. I mean, there's still different parts of space, but one of the major differences, at least temporarily, is gone. So if you're a player who's capable or willing to exert that level of effort, I know some people are like, if I'm gonna have to deal with no local, I'm gonna go to wormhole space where I'm at least gonna get paid a lot more to deal with it, because if you know what you're doing, in most cases I think wormhole space can pay a lot better than null can if you know how and are willing to put that effort in. So I've seen the same thing. I mean, we're only 1 week into blackout, um, and it seems like since I think we're probably gonna hear about when it's ending, we probably have another week at least or several days. Um, that I've seen some people coming over that are just like, if I'm gonna have to deal with no local, I'm gonna do it somewhere else. So um, whether or not that'll be sustained, we'll have to see. um, So we touched on a couple bits there with I know passes passes are not barrels of fun. So
Spaghetti code.
one day they will also not even be an Eve anymore. One day, but I don't think quite as soon as that day can't come soon enough. And from my understanding, most of the devs that work on that stuff are in the same boat that that day cannot come soon enough for them. Um, Anything else any of you guys wanted to share related to building your corporation experiences or different things related to that topic before we hop on to another one?
Another thing that I've noticed too with like these old nullsec combat guys is that a bunch of them are getting into indie. Like I got NC dot dudes doing PI. It's like they're not just trying to get away from the big stage, also trying new things, which is really cool to see these old players doing.
Yeah, also, like to anyone that's unsure about their current state, and maybe if you're in null sec and you're not liking the blackout, or you just want to try something different. I used to be in a null sec alliance a long time ago called Smash, which shows my age because probably not many people know that one anymore. I used to live in Geminate, and I got fed up with just kind of like the whole atmosphere of it, and made my own corp. It only takes a few people. You got a couple buddies maybe that you play Eve with, or whether they're in the same corp or maybe they're in different corps, come together and try out a wormhole. There's a lot of wormhole space that still is ripe for the taking. All it takes is someone that can probe, have a couple of guys that could potentially roll holes, and there's plenty of different options in wormhole space. There's a lot more money to be made than null sec. So maybe if you're unsure if you want to get away from blackout, I would argue that wormholes are actually safer because you have more control over your system in that regard, and the potential to form a fleet that complements the wormhole side effects that it has. I can't remember the actual name because I live in a vanilla one, but like a Wolf Rayet, for instance, using the confessors, that's a great little idea to kind of get new players into the game in a strong ship that'll excel in a Wolf Rayet. So yeah, I just kind of just want to throw it out there that trying out a wormhole space, if you're unsure about the idea, this is a great opportunity because if you're not enjoying blackout, might as well make more money like Exosec because wormholes, generally speaking, make for the average, kind of crab or care bear, whatever you want to call them. You're going to make more money in a wormhole space.
Also, as an additional note, if anyone is interested in trying out wormhole space but doesn't want to lose their affiliate with their current corp, there's something called Wolfpack fleets. They're public fleets that you can join in, and they do C5 sites and kind of give you a little taste of what it is to do high class wormholes, specifically in a Wolf Riot. Um, with confessors and other ships might be interesting to look into if you're trying to tippy toe into wormholes.
I like that phrase, tippy toe, go silently into the wormhole. So, I don't know if all of your corps are new bro friendly, but going off of a couple of the suggestions from both chat and what you guys threw onto the sheet, how do you guys try to engage and bring it? If you do, how do you guys get in new bros engaged into your wormhole corp? Because I think, I mean, this is a great question both for to chat about, and I think because a focus of the whole year that they talked about at Eve North is CCP's like doubling or tripling down on new player experience. We've got to get new players to actually stick. And wormhole space is probably one of the most challenging things to throw new players into and hope they succeed. There's tons of success stories. I mean, I don't know if any of you will have one that you can share, but I know plenty of people that can tell you a story about how they joined Wormhole Space as this like poor one tune person and give them a year and they're multi-boxing four tunes and farming and they fly capitals now and all this other stuff. So like there are success stories, but I suspect that they're pretty uncommon. And way more people try wormhole space and immediately duck back out. They don't like it. It's scary. It doesn't make sense. It's hard. No shortage of reasons. So, um, if your corporation does have and work with new players, how do you how do you sell it to them to start? I'm curious. How do you find someone that's new to even say, "Come to this really hard place and it'll be great"? And if assuming that you do that, um, how do you keep how do you make that stick? How do you provide for new players in your corp?
In my case, which is probably to be fairly unique, I sold my supers when I left Null, and I've kind of been just living off that. And most of the time, if somebody like loses something and it's an unfortunate situation, I'll just buy them a new one and say, okay, here's a new one. Or like me and the co-CEO will bring in a bunch of stuff to just let people have, like whether it be like here's a rolling praxis, that's yours now. Here's a caracal, a scythe, and then pick an assault frigate, that's also yours. And then that way we can try to relieve some of the ISK pressure on people as well. For new people, we like try to get them into gas mining and things like that, so that they can at least make ISK to sustain themselves, and then I'll buy the materials back off of them so that they're making their money in the hole and not having to do the logistics outwards.
Well, in Lux, it's a little bit of the SRP, it's a little bit of the PV with the sites, again with the wormhole effect, and a little bit of the buyback as well. We try to give an incentive for people to self-sustain themselves, which is why we got a C3 static, and that gives them a chance to easily get into something simple like a Gila and be able to do all the sites without worrying, and they kind of like that independence from the corp as well, while still being able to rely on the corp.
In our corp, we don't necessarily target brand new players, but we do target individuals who are trying a different play style that they maybe haven't done before. And sometimes they'll be worried about how am I going to make money in a wormhole? I don't have dual rattlesnakes or dual nesters to go farm our static C5. And something that you can do anywhere in space, but also excels in a wormhole is running abyssal sites. You could close your static connections or what have you, and run abyssal sites and be relatively safe. I had a veteran player just today, actually, or yesterday, I believe. He went and just explored in his Astero and made a billion ISK in about an hour just running relic sites throughout their chain. So even most new players are going to get into an Astero, especially if they're going to do exploration or wormhole space. And so just because you don't have some of these top of the line ratting ships for a wormhole, even a Astero is going to make just fine ISK on its own.
As a little adding a little note to that, we're not really targeting older or newer people in Lux, but we've been having a lot of new people just seeing our ads and kind of asking to join in, and that's how it's been usually.
I think all the new players that we've recruited have all been like day trippers, like just new people who are just coming into wormholes and trying it out. And I think we recruited those guys after trying to kill them
Are you
or
recruiting
killing
from
them.
local, Dimitri? Hi, I see that you're in my wormhole. Please join my corp.
Well, I feel like it shows something if those new players are willing to go into a place like that, especially with all the warnings that you get as a new player jumping into a wormhole. So I feel like it shows some sort of like resolve. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take you on and I'll teach you how to do stuff. And we found a dude recently mining gas. We took him on and showed him how to mine and showed him how to scan better and how to get better things on his ship and sent him on his way.
So if CCP was going to make a change to wormhole space to make it easier for new players, or whether it's easier for them to get involved in, easier for them to get started once they're there, what would you guys think would be one change that that CCP could do to make wormhole space more accessible to newer Eve players?
I think one thing that would help maybe is sites that could be run in frigates that would make some decent money for newer. most new players, if they're of course not going to skill inject, which I wouldn't recommend for a new player to do. Uh, I just am not really sure what sites they could run. Like the anomalies rather. Um, and I think it might be easier to just kind of make some ISK making opportunities that can't be abused by veterans, but at the same time be useful for new players, but that'd be challenging to balance. That would be one thing to help. Um, Overall, though, I mean, I think one thing that makes Eve great is the fact that you kind of need a good community in a corporation to then teach new players. And I think that's one of the questions that CCP will have to, answer that in order to fix their retention rate. Is how can we, whether it be another iteration of the new player experience or just other ways to get players more engaged early on. I'm not sure the answer of that, but I think no matter where you go, whether it be wormholes or nullsec or high or low, what really matters is just having a good community to be a part of, because I think that's why most of us probably enjoy this game, not just for the sci-fi and the awesome gameplay, is just because we enjoy the community that we're in.
I think, like Rival said, sites a site rework almost, or even like a C1 through C3 rework, where like the C1 sites can be run in frigates, and the C2 sites can be run in cruisers, and then work your way up from there. C4, C5, C6, I think is pretty good, but the bottom three could use a little bit of a rework to make better ISK to keep newbies retained that way. I would think. Perhaps even adding more high sec entrances to wormholes, I say reluctantly.
Also, an interesting idea that Red Thoughts said in the Twitch chat that I just want to shout out. It sounds kind of interesting. Adding some DED plexes to wormhole space. I think that's actually a pretty cool idea, especially given the fact that you're seeing Dead Space mods being kind of consumed more due to Abyssal. I think that maybe adding to the stream of Dead Space loot dropping might be interesting and give new players something to kind of strive for. So that's a pretty interesting idea. I like that one.
So it sounds like overall, though, you're saying some of the difficulty is even the easiest of wormhole content can still be challenging for new players. It's been a long time since I've run C1s, but I'm guess are those like are those both are those terrible and we just don't want to recommend them at all, or are they hard enough that that's still not something good that you would just throw a newbie and a frigate into? Um, I'll be honest. I haven't run one in so long. I'm not sure what you can actually run them in. So if a frigate, if the problem is, there are no sites that frigates can run, then that's fantastic feedback and something that I can at least suggest.
It
Oh, in
might
my
not.
sorry.
So it might not even be just the frigates can't run them, but like the salvage restrictions as well too on sleeper sites in lower class. Like in a C1, having to salvage everything afterwards, and then I don't know. I can't really attest to if the salvaging twos needed to have for the battleships or whatever, but I feel like maybe even adding more of the blue loot to the sleeper and reducing some of the salvage out of it might help those players as well.
Also, just the time investment doesn't seem necessarily worth it. C1 loot, I don't have that very awesome wormhole spreadsheet in front of me, but just the time investment just doesn't seem necessarily worth it to be running C1 sites. So maybe a little increase, a bump in the value would help. Also, I think most of us would possibly agree that being a wormhole is going to require cooperation from multiple people, or if you're going to do it solo, you're going to need multiple alts. Kind of speaking off of what Dimitri said, um, salvaging, that's just kind of a pain to do your site, then come back and salvage ship and salvage that, and it's tougher because likely a new player is not having their statics rolled, so there could be someone watching and waiting for things like that. So just like I'm not exactly sure how CCP should go about it, but maybe making C1 space a really solid introductory wormhole class would be a good step in the right direction, where there's a good balance of risk versus reward and time investment.
Most of the times, well, C1 sites, you might take about 10 minutes on the better ones, doing an average slower accounting, and you'll only take about 10 mil from it. 10, 12 mil from blue loot. So, considering the time you waste and the effort it is to go for the triggers and all that, it might be just easier to have some gas, some good gas, or just some lick some rocks and be better with that ISK-wise than actually doing C1 sites. So there might be something interesting to improve on their sites that won't be overpowered for the veterans. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I was scribbling notes down in some of that conversation because new player stuff is one of the most frequent conversations the CSM's been having with CCP because like I mentioned previously, I think it's one of their like top priorities is trying to make the game a little easier for players to get into, to stay once they start playing. So I really appreciate everybody's 2 cents on that. Um, Rival, you asked this question, and we can bounce around here. What does an average day look like in each of your corporations? So, like, how does your corp start running when you guys all start logging in? Whatever time zone that is. Um, what is the corporation's average day and getting the ball rolling look like for you guys?
For dead orbit, it usually is kind of starting in the later EU time zone, and because we have a dual static connection wormhole, we use them. Each static has one purpose. Our C5 is for logistics, so we're going to roll that or kill the mass and basically get a new connection to C5 space until we have something that goes to a Mar or Jita. Mostly Jita now because unfortunately Mar, I don't know what happened to the Mar market, but it sucks now. So mostly Jita now. And then the nullsec is our what we call our content hole. So our nullsec static, we're going to roll that until we run into a region that either A has people ratting in it, will kill ratters. We don't really have any corp income other than the loot that we collect from people that we kill. So usually, in most cases, something that we destroy that's a ratter. If it's expensive, the loot just goes straight to corp, and that goes to funding our own fleet comps and things of that nature. So nullsec static is content. We roll to get something good, a ratting pocket, or maybe a pocket where we think we can get a fight potentially. And then the C5 is logistics, and to a lesser extent, sometimes for crabbing if you're doing dual rattlesnakes or dual nesters. And that's pretty much the whole day. We roll a lot of wormholes. Probably today, I think one guy, bless his heart, has rolled probably 15 wormholes today in nullsec trying to get something good.
To give a perspective, how many times do they have to go in and out to roll it?
If it's one guy doing like quad boxing or I don't even know what you would call it, pentaboxing, it would take for our null six static, it would take 4 megathrons doing a round trip to. If it's our C5 static, it would take 5 megathrons.
Megathrons. You don't use Macarials because fast.
Well, actually, we've kind of downgraded. We've gone to Praxis now because they're cheaper. They're like 60 mil, 70 mil, and so but they're a little slower. But yeah, we don't know.
What
We
is
don't really
this
know that.
travesty? Wormhole Corp using price to be the determining factor on what they're using?
Hey man, we're cheap. We don't have SRP. We just have loot from PvP.
You heard it here. Rivals Corp is poor. Don't.
Indeed.
Well, then Lux, when I wanna be sloppy, and that's just me, it's not a corp sentiment. I use the Orca sometimes, and the Mega.
You cut out there a little.
Well, I use the Orca and the Mega when I'm feeling sloppy for rolling out the static that we have. But we only have 1 billion mass or 1 million. I don't know the numbers. It's the one. It's
One bill holes are
Two
the
holes.
greatest though. You're just like jump two battleships over, jump two battleships
Exactly.
back, and it's gone. Unless you get rolled out, in which it's the worst.
It's hard to get rolled out.
It's almost better than some. I almost find those easier to roll sometimes than the cap capable holes because you jump. With cap holes you can jump your cap over and jump it right back. Unless you jump your cap over and it closes, and then your carrier's stuck in a 5 static 2 with no low segs.
I had something like that happen to me the other night drinking, rolling a hole. I had a random, I don't know how where it came from, but it was a 1 billion nullsec hole. And I rolled myself out. And I just self destructed my praxis and my ascendancy set. I wasn't doing it.
Drew's reminding me of the worst wormhole that exists in Eve. There's actually a wandering nullsec to C1 connection that only has 100 mass on it. So you like find it, and there with like without fail, there's something juicy on the other side. No one checks to see what it is. They tackle that ratting hell, and then three people jump the hole and it closes. It's happened to us at least twice, and they're the worst. So, I'm gonna start migrating us probably towards wrapping up. But one of the big questions I had for everybody, um, a common concern I hear talking with other people that aren't in wormhole space, and they have an idea of what they think wormhole space is like is, and I think part of this is just the way that it gets represented. There's a couple big corps that definitely in some capacity you could say dominate wormhole space. And much like times people actually talk about null, they say like, oh, it's already over, they've already won, or like we can't compete with the giant blob, so why bother trying? Um, do you guys find the fact that there are wormhole corporations out there that are much larger than yours to be a significant impact on how you play and how your corporations live and exist in wormhole space? Um, or if you don't, how is it that you guys live and work and play in a part of Eve that has these larger, more dangerous groups? I say more dangerous, at least larger groups, without it ruining Eve for you.
I actually had an instance of that last night um, where, because we're a 30-man corp and a 300 and plus man corp kind of tried to pull us into them. And I kind of just, I joined their pub chat and I was like, look, you guys want us to join into your hole and fight you. So you guys don't want to fight. You want to gank. If you want to fight, let me know. I'll ping and we can form up. And then they're like, okay, fine, yeah, fight. So I pinged. We got two dudes online, and we ended up taking them on, and we fought. I think the battle report shows 8 on our side, 16 on their side. We only lost, I think, 800 mil, and they lost 5 bill close to.
So you're trading ISK favorably with the people running big fancy ships.
Yeah, you kind of got to play it right though, right? Like if somebody's coming into you with a huge fleet, you got to either tell them like, look, like I'm not coming into you, or you guys can ship down and we can have a fair fight. Like that was a big thing back in the day in wormhole space, like 2014. Like you could ask somebody who had a bigger fleet than you, hey, ship down and I'll fight you. Because why would you want to gank that person? Like if you go in with your 40-man fleet, you kill their 10-man fleet, they're never going to fight you again. If you give them a 10v10, they'll fight you again. That's content. Why would you remove that content for yourself?
Totally agree with what Dimitri is saying. That's what I think it makes wormholes specifically unique compared to nullsec. In nullsec, you see smaller groups maybe trying to get soft if they don't have a nice list of blues or contacts that they can rely on and fall back on. They're going to get whack-a-mole and not going to be able to take some soft. Whereas in a wormhole, if you get a wormhole and then you set up shop and you've got a bigger group that rolls into you, as long as you're giving some form of content, I don't mean you have to feed to them, but actually just fight them. It doesn't matter who wins on what side, as long as you're providing some kind of content. The larger groups aren't really necessarily going to want to push you out because they want you for that content. You want to keep giving fights to each other. And I have seen some of the larger groups. I've actually seen Hard Knocks, for instance, once kind of shipped down a little bit, and we got a nice little fight out of that. Same with the hole control ones. So some of these larger groups that can be spooky to like a smaller group such as my own. I've seen them actually, try and downship and just get a nice fight. That's all that really matters. And then we let each other roll our hole. And we move on to the next wormhole.
End of the day, those guys are there for the same reason we are, right? They just want to fight, and it's counterproductive to put those smaller groups in a position where they don't want to fight you ever again. So why not just fight them that way? And I find that a lot of them do that, and even in Ragnarok, we did that with lesser groups too.
Well, as in from the bigger groups, uh, I haven't had too many encounters with them. But in the opposite side, to kind of feed into the wormhole life, to proliferate wormhole life. Even today, I helped out a German group to, like a smallish corp, 10 people, to colonize a C2. And we've been kind of doing that from time to time to help people grow into the content. And we kind of might just end up fighting them once in a while. But helping out wormholes increase in population is something that we should all aim into. That's what I think, at least.
And with something like that, like if there's a group out there, if you're like the CEO of a smaller corp and you want to get into wormholes, and the idea of finding a wormhole that's empty is daunting to you, join my pub chat, and if any of my guys find a wormhole that's in your criteria, we'll let you know the entrance. And I know that there's other groups in Eve that do that too. I think Eve Scout does it as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. I also like just to touch on the whole like kind of newer players setting up. We were complete. Well, I'll say I was a complete moron setting up my C2 wormhole like a month or two ago, and didn't really have the capability to keep my stacks rolled so that no one could come in while we were anchoring our first citadel, and it got completely dumpstered on. I can't. The larger group, I think their ticker was Candy. I don't know if one of you guys could.
Stranger danger.
Thank you. That's the one. Stranger Danger came in and blew it up promptly. And we had a second one also onlining a few hours later, which we were hoping was not going to be hit because it was kind of in the later U.S. time zone. And they showed up after we managed to roll the hole and disconnect that connection. They showed up somehow again and managed to get into our wormhole. And I kindly actually asked them, could you guys not destroy this citadel since you already got one? Because I promise I'll give you guys some fights in the future. And to my surprise, they actually turned away and left our citadel alone. They 100% could have killed it again. They actually just let us get our second one. They got their content the first, and they let us just kind of plant a seed, so to speak, in our wormhole. And I think we ran into them again not too long after that. And we actually got to have a nice little fight. So that was cool. So nice little shout out to Stranger Danger for not completely uh, not allowing us to move into that C2 the first time.
I think you'll find a lot of wormhole space likes to pretend at least frequently that we're all honor bros and we're better than nullsec for one reason or another. Um, Most people just don't even ask, but most corporations are probably not so content starved that they're going to be super rude about just shooting an undefended structure because it's hardly the best of content. But can't speak for everybody out there, but I've seen lots of people who they just don't even ask. And if they do ask, I think you'd find in many cases people might be willing to do that, um, or they won't. There's for sure corps out there that that's not the style they want to be playing. So, well, I'm going to move us towards wrapping up here. So, I wanted to give everybody a chance to shout out anything else you wanted to shout out. And if you had to share something to I don't know how many people might be in this boat that are actually watching or listening to this stream, but people thinking or considering wormhole space, one sentence to tell them why they should do it.
I'll start us off. I'd like to give it a shout out first to Truex and just say that the kids want mom and dad back. But I also like to follow that up by saying, come to wormhole space. It definitely rewards individual pilot skill. I think it gives more IS than a lot of people may realize it gives. So if you're tired of routing in a VNI or blackout scaring you, come on over to wormhole space because it's got PvP and reward.
Great. How about you, Dimitri? What are you thinking?
I'll give a shout out to Osiris Etney, the co-CEO of my corp, and the guy who got me back into the game after keeping me away for 4 years. And then join Wormhole Space because it's something you haven't done, and why not try that?
Alrighty. Last but not least, Fiel, what are you thinking?
Well, the shout out goes to Adam Falcon, who's been the sugar daddy essentially to keep the corp alive when it was going to die due to inactivity. But that's what kept us kind of going, and we started managing people back again. And now we're just working on making people enjoy wormholes. So, to everyone that wants to try wormholes, I think it's a great chance to go to a permanent blackout.
Alrighty. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening in. Big thanks to my guests, Fial, Dimitri, and Rival. Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time and sharing your thoughts and your experiences about your corporations. Hopefully, everybody thought that this was a good time. And let me know. You feel free to shoot me emails or hit me up on Discord or in game if you want to give me some feedback, guys. And we'll have another excuse me episode in a couple weeks. So happy Monday, and everybody have a good rest of your night. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, FC.